Welcome to the F.A.K.E virtual pop-up. So F.A.K.E fashion for animal kingdom and environment. That's what we are going to talk about today. Fashion for the animal, for the environment, for the human, for everyone. Because every brand you're going to see today are 100% vegan and 100% ethically made. So yeah, I'm very excited. I just need to talk to you about this because I always forgot. Here, text us on WhatsApp. +1 424 488 4473. I will personally reply to you. And if you subscribe to our WhatsApp text community, so every time we have discount with one of our fakers, if we have a live event or whatever, we always send you directly on WhatsApp. And on top of that, if you subscribe, you will receive $800 that you can spend with more than 30 different brands. So just check it out. You can subscribe and unsubscribe at any moment. So I'm waiting for you here. And yeah, I think we're going to start. So just really quick, we still try to figure out what is the best way to do this live. So if you comment on YouTube, I can see all the comments. For Facebook, it's a little more complicated because we cross-post the live on different platforms. So thank you, Jane and Shane. Thank you, Los Angeles Animal Save. Thank you, The Good Tea. And thank you, Arcas Bear, for letting us cross-posting the live on your channel. Suzeli is here with me. That's Suzeli. So she will check if there's any question you have. Leave a comment. If you see we don't answer right away, don't worry. After the live, we will go in each comment, answer to each comment. So yeah. And I think we can start. So we're going to have different brands. We're going to travel all around the world again today. Los Angeles, Paris. The Good Tea, I'm not sure if it's, I think it's New York. I'm not sure. I will see right now. And actually, that's the first brand that I'm going to invite right now. Adila, hello.
Hi from
Toronto. So how are you?
Good. How are you?
Very good. So really quick, before we start with your brand, because now we have you as a brand, but we're gonna have you on September 20, because you as well an author. And I just want to talk really quick about this beautiful book, Source My Garment. So if you want to start a new fashion brand, you have all the information here. And it's like, you have no idea how many information you have. Like I use it. I didn't have time to read everything. I'm sorry, but I already
use it. You know. Text.
I don't hear you. Hello? Hello? Ah. Oh. Yeah. So anyway, you have.
Sorry, it cut out. I'm okay. Are you there? Okay.
Yes. So yeah, for example, if you want information about how to source, how to manufacture, how to find a factory or whatever, you have everything in this book. So yeah, if you want to say like really quick in 2-3 words, what is this book before we start with your brand?
Yeah. Basically, if you know nothing about the industry, this book is perfect for you. If you want to start a clothing brand and you want to do it responsibly, it's basically a step-by-step guide of how to get from idea to work with a manufacturer. Even if you're doing it locally, this book is still relevant, but I focus on offshore manufacturers and how to work with offshore manufacturers and just how to build relationships and do things responsibly. Yeah, that's pretty much. It took me about 4 years to write, and like all the information that I have, I put into it, and I just want more and more people to create responsible and sustainable clothing and vegan lines.
Yeah. And there's so much information, like even if you feel like you already know like 50% of all of this, for the other 50% you don't know, it worth it. Like there's information on really everything. And yeah, so we will see you on September 20 to talk about it. But now we're going to talk about your brand, The Good Tea. And I'm going to share my screen up. It's here. And I let you introduce your brand.
Sure. Oh, I don't know why it's cutting out a bit. Can you hear me?
I hear you perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, perfect. So should I tell you a little bit about how I got started with The Good Tea?
Exactly. Yes, please.
Oh, God. Okay, sorry, I don't know why it keeps cutting out. So basically, so what we were talking about before, I've been a consultant for over like 13 years now. I've been helping brands manufacture responsibly overseas. And during my travels overseas, every year that I would go, I'd read articles about farmers or cotton farmers committing suicide. And it didn't really, over the years, it didn't really register. I think nobody really made it a big deal. And there was like very small sections in the papers about it. And as I was writing the book, I started like doing a lot more research into fair trade, what it means, and the cotton farmers. And I didn't realize that since 2002, almost 300,000 farmers just in India alone have committed suicide. Like, that's nuts. That's like that's about 1,600 a year killing themselves. Like, even if 5 committed suicide in Canada or the US, people would freak out. So I just like, it really makes me sad. And I'm like, I decided that, you know what, I have to, after I started the book, I kind of like closed that chapter. I finished the book and I decided, you know what, I really need to do something and just kind of promote fair trade and what that really means. And just support the cotton farmers. So I got fair trade certified, and I launched the brand The Good Tea actually in the middle of the pandemic. So I got my first shipment in March, which is crazy, but it's fine. Yeah, it's I'm really happy that to start this and really to focus on the supply chain, which has been such a huge part of my purpose and what I do, and really focus on educating people that clothing, even if it's done on offshore, it's not made by machines. People have this misconception where I say factory, they're like, oh, machines. Like, no, it's not like that. It is so labor intensive, and there's so much skill that's involved in making a garment. And it's not just where the factory happens. When you're talking about supply chain, you really need to think about like starting right from the farmer to I don't know what's happening. Okay.
Sorry, I put the wrong address.
That's okay. Can you hear me?
Sorry, because I put the wrong address.
Oh no, that's okay. Can you actually go to the website and I want to show everybody the supply chain map that I have. So if you go under sustainability, supply chain. So if you go down, right here. So this is what I was talking about, the whole supply chain. So I can tell you where my cotton farm is. And then you have the spinning, you have the knitting. Spinning is like when the cotton turns into like a thread or a yarn, and then it gets knitted, and then you go to the dyers. If there's any printing done on your tags or on your shirts, the trims, I've mapped out the whole supply chain. I even tell you who my brokers are, customs brokers are. So this is what I'm referring to, like how like supply chain is so important, and like the factory is important, but it's also like the magic happens in so many places, and it requires so many skill sets. If you go up a little bit,
to find a brand as transparent as you.
Yeah, like I'm just trying to, like, whatever I know about being responsible, like I'm still learning too, right? This thing, like, being sustainable, and it's always about learning. So everything that I know, I'm trying to put into the product and really show like how I believe that a brand should be responsible. If you go up, I'll show you one more thing under supply chain. Sorry, scroll up a little bit. There's a video. See this, our factory video? Go down. It's like about 5 minutes long. We don't have to watch it, but I just wanted everybody to know like another thing about the factory that's actually making the good tea. It's actually run by Franciscan nuns. So like, I'm like always talking to nuns on WhatsApp. It's so funny. I'm like, where's my stuff going? So it's the factory started in, oh gosh, shoot, I can't even remember. I think I can't remember the year, sorry, 1997. And they started this factory to support an old age home and a kids orphanage. So the money, like they're trying to be like, bring in money so that they can support that. the children as well as the old age homes. So this is kind of the story about the factory as well. So when we're picking our partners too, we really want to think about like who are we working with and do they share the same values, and they are of course also fair trade certified. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about the supply chain and the good tea. But what else can
Perfect. I just wanted to show really quick your Instagram, so people, if they want to go and follow you, so they will get all the information.
For sure.
And yeah, I saw you sell a kit as well if they want to dye the shirt.
Yeah, so I'm actually wearing one of the tie-dye shirts. So this is the unisex tee. So yeah, we just started selling. It took me so long to find somebody that has natural dyes, because we want to pick partners, obviously, that go along with our values. And a lot of these dye kits are so toxic. So yeah, that we started selling tie-dye kits, which is super fun.
And I'm sorry, I realized I was sharing the video, but apparently he opened in another window, so people didn't see it. But yeah, now you have to go on the website and check the video.
Yeah, for sure. Check the video. It's pretty awesome.
And yeah, oh, someone is asking, that is the link for your book. He probably asked what is
it's
the
actually you can purchase it also on the Good Tea.
On your website, The Good Teas?
You can go you can go to Source My Garment, or you can actually go to The Good Tea. I also sell it on there's a tab called The Good Reads, so you can purchase it there as well. And you also get a discount code, everybody.
Nice. Okay, thank you so much for being a part of this event. And yeah, we're gonna have our next guest right now.
For sure. Do you want me to give you guys the discount code?
Or, oh yeah, if you have it now, yes.
No, yeah. So the discount code is it's just F.A.K.E, and it's 20% off. So F.A.K.E, and then you can get 20% off your order.
Nice.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. See you soon. See you on the 23rd.
Yeah. Okay. So also, I think I forgot to tell you guys, our special guest today. I'm so excited about it that I even forget to mention it. We have Ryuji Chua, aka Peace by Vegan, one of the most inspiring vegan activists I know. He inspired me so much. We talk a lot about how to be more, how to open more people's eyes about what's happening right now, and he's gonna help you. If you have any question, be ready. He's gonna tell you what is maybe the best way to be a vegan activist. And yeah, so right now we're gonna have Cynthia from Arcasberg. So I'm just gonna add her. Hello, Cynthia.
Hi.
How are you?
Great, and you? I had some little problems here with my internet. Hey! So I'm adjusting on the living room.
Now we can hear perfectly. So yeah, I'm going to share my screen because you have a beautiful brand up. A plant-based sneakers, 100% vegan and ethical. It's right now.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'll let you introduce your brand.
So Arcasberg is a plant-based sneakers, and because I was listening Adila, right?
Yeah.
And it was so beautiful because all of us, I can see, we are working on the same way, you know, not just to change products in better, but also to change the way we live, you know, in harmony with our environment. So while I was doing Arcasberg, I just realized that it's so many chemicals, so many bad things. Oh, this might produce cancer in your body. So, but that's okay, just a small portion. So this and that and that. So I was like, no, we have to change it. So our colors, as you see, like is bleach free and dye free, because we choose a supplier that recycle fabrics by color. So when I say that, even people that work with this say, how that? Because normally the recycle process for fabrics It's just, you separate fabrics, you recycle, you bleach them, and then you dye again. And you lose tons of water, you put chemicals harmful for our bodies. And in this way, we are like carefully sourcing. And then I choose this supplier that is a very good partner to dye it, to avoid the dye. So all the like light blue color, the red that you can see are just, a social work. They hire so many people that have like very like problems in life to find work, and then the instructor they have to separate this fabric just line of sacks. How can I say it's just big sack of colors like by red, blue, and then they can recycle without using water in the process and without using dye. So this is something that I love. But as you know, another thing that I know you are passionate about, we have in common, is the cork.
Yeah, I love cork. It's one of the most sustainable alternative to leather and any. Yeah. Totally agree.
Because we respect, the trees. You don't cut trees. Even when people say, oh, this is made, for example, my boxes are just recycled materials. Because some like from they call craft is beautiful to see, looks like recycled, but it's not. It's trees from reforestation. And reforestation is very bad if you use them. If you just plant trees to reforest the world, is good. But if you put them to cut again, it's horrible because there's no biodiversity. So we are changing the whole ecosystem. So as you know, this is antibacterial. If you want to wear without socks, you can. So it doesn't smell.
Yeah, it's true. I didn't believe you, and I tried, and it's true.
And the cork, as you know, as much because they are exposed, so as much humidity they get, they can absorb, and it dries very fast. It goes away. And here we have like a natural latex that maintain the memory foam. So after so much, for now we have tested for 2 years. After years you are using, you don't lose the memory foam. And then inside we have organic cotton made from, it's got
certified.
Yeah, certified.
Nice.
And recycled rubber. When you can see over there, it's just little pieces.
And you even have coconut, right?
Yes, that's why I saved it for the last part, because our customers was one lady in Germany. She said, wow, this is unbelievable comfortable. It's like you're walking in clouds. And actually, it's because you are walking on coconut.
That's crazy.
So, and coconut fiber is the same thing as cork. As much humidity they get, more dense they become. So that's why I say don't wash on the washing machine, because you can get the coconut soaked. But you can wash outside and clean also with a wet fabric, and very gentle. But that's the point. Walking on coconut, it's so good. and it's something that people don't know, but we use coconut for so many things, to make milk, to make flour. But then they don't use coconut fiber for lots of things. So in places like Brazil, that where I'm from, and places like Thailand, there's a big production of coconut. The fiber is everywhere, is wasted all the time. And we could use much more, so we choose to use the fiber over here, so we don't waste more materials. We recycle as much as we can.
Nice. And so if they want to check it out, Arcasbear on Instagram is Arcasbear Sneakers. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. And then we have a special discount for F.A.K.E.
Oh, yeah, which is
Can message us and send a message, so you're gonna have $50 off.
nice. Oh, thank you so much.
Just use, Instagram and send a message over there.
Okay, they just DM you, say hi, I come from Fake, and they
Yeah.
get a discount. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Up. Okay, so now we are going to receive not only a friend, but as well one of the most inspiring vegan activists. He have a podcast. If you have any question on how to be, how to do more, how to be more active, he's gonna answer to you. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna add him here.
Yo, hello.
Yo, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of it. And yeah, I'm super excited to have you. I think
Yeah, I'm excited too, but I'm really nervous now because you set the bar like so high. You gotta basically tell them that I'm okay, so that whatever I do, I can like over deliver, and then people will be like, oh, okay, that was not so bad.
I hope people won't be disappointed. But no, for sure, no. You're really amazing. Every time I ask you a question, you find a way to answer it. And if you don't know, you're like, okay, let's just think about it for a minute. And then you find the best way to go to it. And you're like, wow, he's so smart. Yeah, you're really good at this.
Thank you so much.
So maybe the best is that you tell a little bit about your vegan journey, how you decide to become vegan, and how you realize that becoming vegan was good, but you need to take a step further and become an activist. So yeah, if you want to tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, sure thing. So the thing is that I think all this kind of fits together, right? So just now when you said that, I always have answers, which I don't. I really don't. But I can think through problems and I can answer them, and that all ties into my story, because the way that I became vegan was through being selfish at first. So what I mean by that is that when I was in high school, I was a really shy kid. I was socially awkward. I didn't like talking to people. I had friends. I loved my friends. My friends in high school are awesome, but I wanted to be popular, as I was a teenager. And because of that, I was really sad. I remember sitting at home on the weekends and thinking about all the cool kids partying and stuff like that, and I wanted to be a part of that. And so essentially what I did at a certain point, and I was very lucky because I stumbled upon on the internet some videos of people talking about how, hey, if you want a better life, you can actually create that if you work hard. If you work on yourself, you read books, you learn skills, you can learn communication skills, you can learn human psychology, how people work. You can actually learn how to navigate the world in a more effective way. And that was really empowering. And so I basically embarked on this journey of trying to become the best version of myself. So I embarked on this journey of personal development, and there are a few things that I learned very, very on. And a few of the lessons that I learned really early on are, first of all, that I can be wrong about anything, and that I should always be open to change. And I think those mindsets really took me a long way, because that's what made me realize, hey, well, I'm not happy with who I am right now, but if I'm able to let go of beliefs that I have and behaviors that I have and learn new beliefs and learn new behaviors, then I can change and I can actually have and be popular, whatever it is. I don't know if I'm popular now. Maybe that's why I try so hard on social media. I don't know. But the point is, I'd be able to get there, right? And so I was always reading new books, always trying to find new things. And one day I realized, hey, I should learn about new topics. And I picked up this book called Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, which is basically a history book. And I read that book because I realized that history was a topic that I didn't know a lot about. And I just want to learn more about stuff that I didn't know about. And this book ended up being one of the most thought-provoking books that I've ever read in my entire life. And what the author in that book is, he basically took different concepts of history or different moments in history, and he talked about them in a way that was really thought-provoking and really mind-blowing. So, for example, he would say that the agricultural revolution is actually the biggest fraud in history, right? Because it was the time when, instead of, we think about it as a big step in civilization, but he says that maybe we just became more unhappy as a result of that. So the whole thing was just incredibly, incredibly thought-provoking. And it was in that book that I first learned about the industrial agriculture, the modern industrial agriculture industry. And that was the first time that I was really exposed to how animals were treated so horribly in those industries and how we basically see them as commodities, as objects, as machines to get something out of. And that really got me thinking. And that's when what I learned earlier on kicked in, this idea of I should always be open to questioning everything. I should always be open to being wrong about anything. And I realized that even though my entire life I loved eating meat, I loved eating eggs, I loved eating cheese. I'm in Paris right now, grew up in Paris, love eating cheese. I realized that it's not because I did this my entire life and that I liked it so much that it's an ethical behavior. And I realized that if I don't want to lie to myself, then I need to change. I didn't even vegan at the time. All I knew was that these industries cause suffering to animals. So I should probably stop contributing to those industries. That's as deep as I was thinking about it. And so yeah, long story short, I did a bunch of research, found out that all the industries that use animals in every way possible, they're all really bad. And I was like, I don't have a choice. I'm going to become vegan. And as a result of that, that was the first time that I really cared about something that was outside myself, in a sense, because before then, I was miserable. Like I didn't have this mental space to really care about things outside myself. I was like, oh, my life sucks. I just want to be happy. I just want to have friends. And then all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, I can also care about others outside of me. What is this? Right. And, ever since I was a kid, I always felt connected to animals. And so I always wanted to do something. So, I knew from the get that I wanted to do something for animals. But the problem was, because at the time I was still pretty socially awkward and shy and all that, I was basically really scared to talk to people about animal rights. And when I did, it didn't go very well. And that's why I embarked on this journey even more to really master social skills, communication skills, attain core confidence, that kind of thing. And 2.5 years later, I finally started activism. It took me 2.5 years, but I got there. I finally got there.
Yeah, I see you on the street talking to people, trying to not to convince them, but to open their eyes on what's happening in the animal world, and you look so cool, and it looks so easy for you. So that's funny when you say that. Like that's very inspiring.
It was really, really hard. And I think that's one thing that I try to encourage people to realize on my podcast and on my other content, is that if you feel like it's difficult for you to communicate, if it's difficult for you to talk about animal rights, you're scared to do so, it's just because you haven't learned certain skills, or it's just because you haven't worked on yourself to be able to do this in a way that's effective. That's all that it is. Learning how to communicate effectively is a very learnable skill, just like anything else. If you want to learn how to play an instrument, you take lessons and you learn how to do it. You practice and then you get good. And speaking to people, communicating is no different. It's a skill. So now, because I've learned it, it can look easy. Just like when you learn an instrument for a couple of years, you get pretty good at it. But what you don't necessarily see is all the hard work that went into that, all the study, the practice, the very awkward moments, the times when you fail and all that. But those things all happened, and anyone can learn this skill for sure.
And you're an amazing pianist as well, so you know what you're talking about.
Thank you.
I hear you play. And so actually, yeah, that's a lot of time I said that when you embrace this movement and you know your why, you know why you're doing it, it usually helps you to give you goals that are way bigger than ego and money, and so that make you stronger. And that's one of the biggest proof with what you say, because when we see you, we will never believe that it's something difficult for you. It looks so natural and easy.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you. And that's why I started, for example, that's why I'm just plugging my stuff at this point. But that's why I started my podcast, for example, the Animal Advocate Podcast, because I wanted to share what I learned so far. And I really wanted to show that. One of the first lessons that I learned, because I saw people who were much more charismatic than me, people who were awesome at communicating with others. And I was like, I can never be like that. And what they told me is that everyone is cut from the same cloth. What one person can do, another person can do. And that was so empowering for me to understand that, because that's what gave me the strength to go and tell myself, okay, I'm gonna go learn this. And also the reason why I'm able to break these things down, for example, in the Animal Advocate Podcast, is because I've struggled with it. So I understand how to like actually talk about the different struggles that we've had. And I feel like that's one of the things that makes me unique, is that because I wasn't a natural at this at all, I also have this advantage of being able to explain it in a way that's relatable and in a way that makes sense.
So let's go into it.
Let's do it.
is there like the ultimate best way to be an activist, a vegan activist, like the ultimate best way to convince someone?
That's a good point. So you asked two different questions there. The first question is about what's the best way to be an activist. I think it's important to remember that being an activist comes in many different shapes and sizes. So being an activist could be sharing food with people. It could be talking to people on the streets the way that I've done a lot. It can be making content for social media. It can be making films, but it can also be organizing a march. It can also be doing a disruption. And these are all valid forms of activism that have all played a part in past social movements to different degrees. And we should remember that there's not one way to be an activist, quote unquote. So the best way to be an activist is really, my favorite person who put this in a way that makes sense is Wayne Sheng, the co-founder of Direct Action Everywhere. And he said, find your voice, find some friends, and fight like hell. And that's what he said about how you should be an activist is you find what you're good at and what resonates with you that's going to make a difference. You find some people to do it with, and then you just go all out. You just do it. So that's to be an activist. Now, personally, I talk a lot about interpersonal communication because I think that's where I can bring the most value to my audience and people that I talk to. But it's also been a huge part of my activism, whether it's been talking to people on the streets or having conversations with people in my life or making content on social media. All those things are things that I did based on the communication skills that I learned. So that's why I talk about that. But I don't want anyone to think for a second that talking to people, and especially because the way that I do it, it seems very peaceful. It seems like people are receptive. I don't want people to think that that's a superior form of activism, because it's not. It's just what I'm good at, and it's just what I excel at, and that's what I choose to share with the world. But regardless of that, if that's what you want to learn, then there are things that you can learn in order to be able to communicate more effectively with people. And I was thinking about, okay, what are the most important concepts? And there are a lot of communication concepts that I think are very important. But lately, the one that I've been concentrating on, the one that I've been trying to learn more about and apply in my life as well, because I'm always learning, I'm still growing, is the concept of empathy and the concept of listening. So what I mean by that is that before, 5 years ago when I became vegan, I had a girlfriend and I tried to get her to go vegan, as we often do as vegans, and it didn't go well. And it felt like she wasn't listening to me. It felt like she wasn't receptive, and we had many fights about it. It was really bad, and our relationship got really toxic. We eventually broke up. But now thinking back, one thing that I realized is that if I think about where she was at the time, and I try to think how she was feeling back then, I don't know. And that made me realize that I failed to empathize with her. I failed to listen to her. And maybe only if I had listened and I had understood what was going on in her mind and how she was feeling, maybe I would have been able to communicate with her in a more effective and healthy way. So the reason I think empathy is so important is because if you read any book about communication, one of the first lessons you'll learn is that the key to being heard is to listen first. They'll always say it's so important to listen to others. And this didn't hit me until much later, but there was one day I remember very clearly where it hit me, because you read this and you're like, okay, I'm going to listen to people. Okay, that's easy. Just listen. But if you're not conscious of this, what happens, and this is what I did for a long time, is you have a conversation with someone and you might think you're listening, but in fact, what you're doing is you're just thinking in your mind. If you take a moment to be aware of what you're doing in your mind, is you're asking yourself, how does this relate to me? And what do I want to say about this? The question I would invite you to ask yourself is, how many times have you hung out with people and maybe you say a story, or someone tells a story, and as soon as the story ends, someone else comes in the conversation and says, I had a similar experience. That reminds me of this thing that relates to me. And when you're hanging out with friends, it's not really a big deal, but that really shows the mindset that we're in when we talk to people, where we just think, oh, that reminds me of this story about me, right? In reality, if you were to listen to the other person and you wanted to make them feel heard and validated, a much better response would be to first really listen to what they say and be like, wow, thank you for sharing that. That's an awesome experience. I'm so sorry you went through that. How did that make you feel? What did you think about that? What did you do after that? right?
Yeah.
It would be being interested in what that person has to say. But instead, we tend to just think of ourselves. And so listening means, instead of being in your head and thinking about whatever it is you're thinking about, you just clear your mind and you're present with the person that you're talking to. And the way that you try to understand them, and this is super, super key, is instead of trying to understand people through your own worldview, you want to understand what the other person means when they're saying things. Because when you talk to someone, there's always what they say, the words that they say, and then there's the subtext, what they actually mean. So for example, if you ask me, how are you, Ryuji? And I say, oh, I'm fine. Well, the words, if you write them down on paper, says, I'm fine, I'm doing good. But the way that I said it communicates, well, I'm not doing very good, as an example. So there's always a gap between what people say and what people really mean. And truly listening, the way that I've come to understand it, what empathy is to be able to decipher what people mean, not just listening to the words that they say. And if you're able to do that, it will help you communicate so much better with other people, whether it be about animal rights or veganism or any other topic, because you can actually speak to them in a way that you can be more sure that it's going to resonate with them. So if they ask a question and you understand what is their actual concern, you can address their actual concern. If that's just an example. But that's one thing that I found so important, because not only people feel heard, and if people don't feel heard, they won't listen to you, but also you get to understand what is this person thinking, and that informs you of what words you should use, what you should tell them, what questions you should ask them.
But how do you deal, because that's for me the most difficult part, how do you deal with patience when you know that while you are taking your time to explain to this person, you know that millions of animals are going to get killed today, and you feel like as a vegan you always have this feeling like you need to convince them now to make them understand what's happening now. So how can you deal with patience?
Yeah, so I think there are different ways to go about this. And part of it really, I think the most important thing when it comes to developing patience is looking at it as a long-term journey. And the way that I think about it is not how can I be more patient in a one-off conversation with someone when they disagree with me, but how can I become emotionally non-reactive to things that I can't control? And that includes anything. And that's a long-term journey that you take in your life. So that's the real answer, I think. But beyond that, there are other things, shifts in mindsets that you can have, right? So for example, one thing that I think, and one of the reasons I'm able to be patient with people, quote unquote, or talk to them and listen to them, even though what they're saying is ridiculous, and then listen and then say, oh, okay, I see what you're saying, and ask questions and all that, is because in my mind, the way that I literally think is that, well, this might take longer than if I just tell them something, but I also understand that the long way is actually the short way. Because if I'm not patient, don't listen, if I don't take the time to acknowledge what they're saying, acknowledge their point of view, and try to understand what they mean, then the whole thing is going to divulge into this toxic thing between me and the other person. They're not going to listen anyways. We're both going to be frustrated, and it's not going to be good. Losing my patience is not going to lead to a faster result. If anything, the more patient I am, the faster the result is going to come.
That's amazing. That's exactly true. So actually, that's made me think of this question. So what is the worst way to be an activist, a vegan activist?
Well, I don't know. And I think one of the things that I learned very early on too is that when it comes to an effective way of doing things, an ineffective way of doing something, or a good way and a bad way, there are really rarely black and white answers to these questions, right? I think that if you ever ask someone, what is the best way to do this? And they say, it's this. To me, that's a huge red flag, because I'm like, especially when it comes to something as uncertain as communication, because we're all different. The people we're talking to are all different. They're all at different points in their lives. There's so many variables that come into how to talk to someone for that to be a conducive dialogue, that I don't think there's any way that you can say this is the best way to do something, this is the worst way to do something. So I'll give you an example. Some people think that shaming people is something that we shouldn't do, right? And personally, for example, I don't think I've ever really shamed someone, or not intentionally at least. People have felt shame as a result of what I've told them, but that's different from me intentionally going out and shaming someone. But that being said, I wouldn't say that it's a bad way of communicating or that it's ineffective, because clearly there are people who have been shamed into changing, and they attribute that to something good in their lives. So our mutual friend Jane Velez Mitchell, she was shamed into being vegan, and someone pointed at her because she was vegetarian. They said milk is liquid meat, and she was basically shamed, and she was like, that changed my life. So you can't know what works and doesn't work. So when it comes to communicating with someone, it's not that there's good and bad. And I guess if there was something that was bad, would be having a bad intention, right? I don't think that communicating with the intent to harm I don't think that's ethical. So if you want to talk about what's the worst, that's that. But that's in the intention that can come off in many different ways. But the reason why there's no black and white answer is because communicating effectively is not about having these rules and principles that you apply across the board. It's about understanding communication in a way that when you're in front of someone, you can more and more quickly decipher what's going on in their minds and how they're feeling. And then based on all your past experiences and based on everything that you've learned, you pick a course of action that you think is going to lead to the result that you want. There's always a choice. How you talk to someone is going to depend on so many things. So some people, I might ask them a lot of questions. Some people, they just want to know. They're just like, hey, just give me the information that I'm just going to tell them, right? So it depends. And the most effective thing to do in both the situations would be different. So being effective in turn is being able to make those choices. And the flip side of that is that, well, what's the worst way to communicate? Well, I don't know. It depends. The worst way to communicate, I guess, is to not listen and then do the complete opposite of what would fit that person's blueprint in that moment. But that would depend in every situation.
So now I have a question that most of vegan ask, I believe, and I see all your content. Many times I see this topic coming again, and I feel it's connected with all of this, the way of finding the best way to communicate and etc. It's how to deal with friends and family, because it's always more difficult to talk with friends and family. So what do you answer usually to people asking you this? Because I can tell that's one of the main questions that people ask.
Yeah. I think it's a difficult question to answer. And again, it's going to depend on people and their circumstances, right? So sometimes people ask me, well, what do I tell my family? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what your past relationship was with your family. I don't know what you've told them before. I don't know what's happened up to this point. So it depends. But overall, a couple things that I will say is that if you want to learn how to communicate effectively with the people around you, then practice on strangers. One of the things that really helped me personally was going out and talking to a lot of people out in the streets, because the communication principles are always the same. Yes, they are harder to follow when you're talking to someone who is a family member or a close friend, maybe because there's ego and all sorts of things and past baggage and all that. But the principles themselves are the same. And the more you practice these principles outside your friends and family, you'll have more confidence when talking to your friends and family, right? Because if you are talking to a family member and you see you read a book about communication and you're like, okay, I should listen. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to practice this on my dad. And that's like the only shot that you have. Well, you've never practiced. So your chance of succeeding is really low. And on top of that, it's harder. So you're just shooting yourself in the foot. But if you go try that with other people in your life or just strangers or whatever it is, you can practice this anywhere. And then after having practiced that on 50 people, then you go try with a family member. It's going to be easy. It's still not going to be easy, but at least it's going to get easier. So that's one thing you can do. But that being said, other people might choose to go around, right? So one thing that this is my personal opinion, but I think that we should recognize as advocates that we are not meant to change everyone. We can't affect everyone. At a certain point, we got to accept that, look, we don't have superpowers. We can't force people to go vegan, even though non-vegans seem to think so. And that being the case, we really have to come to terms with the fact that, hey, some people that I talk to, they're not going to change and they're not going to care about what I say. Maybe no matter what. Maybe you can always keep hope, and I like to be hopeful for people, but at a certain point realize that, okay, well, if this person's not going to listen, well, I don't know what to say. You can think about it like making friends. If you want to make friends, there are people with whom you're not going to get along. And the question here is, are you going to spend time trying to befriend people, trying to chase people who don't want to be your friends? Actually, many people do this. Many people do this in relationships where they always chase what they can't have. And the question you got to ask yourself is, do you want to chase people that don't want to be your friends, or do you want to spend time with people who value you and people who actually want to be your friend, and you want to double down on those relationships, right? So in the context of friendship, it seems like it makes sense that, okay, we should probably double down on the people who value us. But when it comes to activism and trying to change people and share a beautiful message with people, it seems to do the opposite, where a lot of us, and I've done this for sure, where it's like the people who don't want to listen, those are the people that I want to get to. And at a certain point, we got to think, is it worth it to spend all this time, to spend an hour debating someone who doesn't care, who's stubborn, who's just out to get me and trying to make me feel bad? Do I want to spend an hour debating that person, or do I want to spend 10 minutes talking to six people who are open-minded, who are kind, compassionate, who are ready to change, who care about animals, who care about the world, who want to be a better person? Like, what do you want to do? And to me, I choose to go with the people who I'm going to be able to affect. And the hard pill to swallow here is that sometimes the people who are closest to us are just not those people who are going to listen. And in that case, I think that there's a point where we have to come to accept, hey, maybe my friends and family, they're not the people that I'm going to change and affect. And that's fine. And go find a way that you can use your voice in a productive way. Because if you don't, you're going to get burned out. And that's what I see a lot of people go through, is that because the only people that they talk to about animal rights is their classmates, their families, and they get made fun of. And they feel like people don't care. They now feel like because the 5 people they're around don't care, it just feels like the entire world doesn't care. And then you feel horrible. And then you start beating yourself up and you start telling yourself, I'm not good enough. I suck. Why can't I do anything? When it's not fully because of you. Always ask yourself, how can I do things differently? But also, it's not you. Look, if I try to sell socks to someone who doesn't want socks, there's nothing I can say that's going to make them want the socks. If I want to sell socks, I got to go to people who want to buy socks. So this is no different when it comes to having conducive dialogues about anything, but in this case, animal rights and veganism. You got to pick the people who want to listen. And one of the biggest mistakes that people make is they just spend their time on the wrong people. And sometimes that is also friends and family.
Yeah, I feel like the main key that I'm going to keep from this conversation is listen to be listened.
Yeah, definitely.
And what will be actually, we're almost going to have to end because there's another live after.
Yep.
So we have like 8 minutes left. So what will be the main question that people ask you?
What do you mean?
If there's one, like on how to be to be more effective in activism, like what must people ask you?
Well, actually, you're asking me what's the question that people ask me the most?
Yes.
Okay, so the question that people ask me the most, and see what I just did there is I wanted to make sure that I'm actually answering your question. So if you're not sure what someone's saying, always clarify, right? Because I could have just said something that I thought I would answer you, but instead I was like, wait, I'm not sure I understood what Jonathan said, so let me clarify that. So getting a little meta here, but anyways. But yeah, the question that people ask me the most is actually what you asked me. It's about friends and family or partners sometimes, but it's really about basic things about how to get by in day-to-day life with people around you. That's what people ask me about the most, because I think that's what people struggle with the most. Because most people are not necessarily out there in the streets or out there making videos about animal rights or stuff like that, but they're just vegans in the world. And they just struggle to get through the day, or not necessarily struggle, but they just deal with a lot of hardships, right? Colleagues, classmates, family, friends, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what people ask me about the most. So I'm glad we did it.
Yeah. Yeah, I did my study, my research, and that's what came out the most, I felt. And so maybe before we end, how can we be effective during COVID-19?
Sure thing. So different people have different answers to this. To me personally, I've spent a lot of time learning, reflecting, and trying to grow as a person, so that I can basically upgrade my skills to be more effective. Because being effective and creating change is not just about being out there and doing stuff. It's also, you got to increase your stat, right? So in video games, like, you can't beat the final boss unless you train. I'm not even a gamer. I don't know why I made this analogy, but in Pokemon, you can't beat the Elite Four until like you train your Pokemon to be like level 100. Like, I don't know if that's ethical. Is Pokemon vegan? I don't know. Whatever. The point is, you got to train. So I spent a lot of my time doing that. I've read books. I learned new things, and that's what I spent a lot of time doing because, I just spent a lot of time at home. And so that's what I personally did. I made an episode about that where I basically talked about how I think that's one great thing that we can do. But otherwise, online, you can always join trainings, you can sign petitions, you can donate to sanctuaries. There are a lot of things virtually like that you can do to help animals as well. But to me personally, I have spent a lot of time learning new things, trying to acquire new skills, so that I can be more effective in the long term.
So increasing our knowledge, listening more, and is there anything else we can add to this to this list of what we have to do to be more effective?
No, I mean, that's about it. I would say that if you want to become more effective and you learn something from this segment that we did, then just take one thing and then actually go do it, because knowledge only becomes practical when you actually use it. Otherwise, it's useless, right? If you listen to all this and you were inspired, but you don't put it into action, this would have been a waste of your time. So go take one thing. Maybe it's just you tell yourself, I'm going to try to listen more, and then actually go do it. So take one thing and implement it. And that's how you learn skills. So that would be my final word.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Let me just add this. The Animal Advocate podcast by Peace by Vegan. We can find you everywhere, right? iTunes, Spotify, everywhere.
Yeah, pretty much everywhere on your favorite podcatcher.
Nice. And and on Instagram, Peace by Vegan. If you have any question, that's the moment. Go and ask him. He can even, I know that if we request, like, let's say if I want you to do a podcast about how to be more effective online, I know that you're going to read that and probably do a podcast about it.
Yes. Actually, I just made a form for that. So if you have any questions that you want me to answer on a podcast episode that you think I can help with, go on peacebyvegan.com/podcast. And at the bottom, there's a form that you can fill out and send a question in. And I'd be super happy to help you if I can. And,
You could. I know it. You see, I set up the bar here and you were way above. So
thank you so much. I hope so. Thank you. I appreciate it.
So thank you so much. Bye everyone, and see you. Oh no, not next week. Next week we won't have the virtual pop-up, but in 2 weeks. So we see you in 2 weeks, and don't forget to text us on WhatsApp 424-488-4473, and to follow Peace by Vegan and all the beautiful brands that was here today, The Good Tea and Arcas Bear. Bye bye.